My son-in-law called me an expense line at his work event. His CFO knew exactly who I was. I agreed to attend the recognition dinner because my daughter told me that it would mean a lot to her. I was 62, and evenings like that no longer felt natural to me, but her voice carried hope I did not want to disappoint. I was never close to my son-in-law, Michael Turner. There was always a thin stiffness in the air when we spoke. Money and planning made him uneasy. My background in accounting seemed to bother him more than he ever admitted. Years earlier, when he and my daughter struggled, I helped them with several $1,000s. I did it without hesitation, telling them that family steps in when needed. Michael thanked me once in a tone that sounded practiced. After that, he avoided the subject entirely, as if pretending it never happened would free him from the memory of needing help. He liked to talk about his job at the logistics firm. He described himself as the one who kept their budgets sharp and their numbers clean. When I once offered a simple suggestion about tracking expenses, he brushed it aside. He told me that he had everything under control, and I learned to keep quiet after that. On the night of the dinner, I wore my best suit. My knees complained as I made my way to the car, but I pushed through it. My daughter talked excitedly on the drive, listing the awards and the speeches. Michael only mentioned how long the evening might run and how he hoped his team would not embarrass him. When we entered the hotel ballroom, the air smelled of perfume and warm appetizers. Groups of employees clustered around tall tables, talking loudly over the music. A screen at the front rotated messages about growth and efficiency. It all felt distant from my world. Michael slipped away almost immediately. My daughter stayed with me for a moment, then told me gently that she wanted to support him tonight. I told her not to worry and stood near a display along the wall. It gave me a place to watch without taking up space. I reminded myself that I was there for her, not for the company. If she needed my presence, then a few uncomfortable hours were a small price. As the room filled, I watched Michael move through the crowd with eager confidence. He laughed too loudly, nodded too quickly, and seemed to change his posture depending on who he was speaking to. Seeing him drift farther away into that world, I felt a small, familiar ache. It was the sense that, in his eyes, I had never been more than an obligation at the edge of his life. I stood near the display table, trying to stay out of the way. People drifted past me with drinks in their hands, talking about shipments, promotions, and quarterly targets. Michael was a few steps behind me, speaking to a small group of executives. His voice carried just enough for me to hear without meaning to. He told them that he had to bring an extra expense line from home tonight. He said it lightly, the way someone might make a joke to seem clever. The group let out a short, awkward laugh. None of them realized that the person he was talking about was standing only a few feet away. I felt the words sink in slowly. Expense line, a cost, something to be accounted for and minimized. My chest tightened in a steady, dull way. It was not anger at first, more a quiet sting I felt deep behind my ribs. I thought back to the years when he and my daughter were struggling. The bills, the stress, the phone call where they sounded ashamed to even ask for help. I had given them several $1,000s without thinking twice. I told them both that it was only money and that getting through hard times mattered more. Hearing him reduce me to a burden now felt heavier than I expected. It told me something about how he had seen me all along. I stayed where I was, keeping my breathing steady. Confronting him in that room would have served no purpose. When he glanced in my direction a moment later, there was no hint that he knew I heard him. He carried on talking, smiling, enjoying the attention of people he wanted approval from. My daughter returned and asked if I was doing all right. I told her I was fine, because I did not want to weigh her down on a night she had hoped would be simple. She talked about the program starting soon. I nodded and kept my thoughts to myself. The comment kept replaying quietly in my mind. It did not grow louder, but it settled deeper, like it had found its own place to sit. I reminded myself again why I came. I wanted my daughter to feel supported, even if the room around me made me feel small. But as I stood there, watching Michael lift his glass in another cheerful exchange, I couldn't shake the thought that this night was revealing something I had chosen not to see before. Something about who he really was when he thought no one was listening. Daniel Wheeler, the CFO, approached me while I was looking over a company timeline on the wall. He walked slowly, as if making sure he had the right person before speaking. He greeted me with a quiet familiarity that caught me off guard. I did not expect anyone in that room to recognize me. He told me that he remembered me from a community financial literacy program years earlier. His department had partnered with the organization, and he had attended several sessions as part of their internal training. I nodded, surprised he would remember something so small. I had taught a few workshops after retiring, mostly to keep my mind active. He asked about my background in a polite, genuine way. He said that Michael had introduced me only as a family guest, and he seemed puzzled by the vagueness. I kept my answers simple, explaining that I had worked in accounting for decades. I told him that I enjoyed helping small groups understand cost tracking and retirement planning after I stepped away from full-time work. As soon as I mentioned cost tracking, he paused. It was the kind of pause someone takes when a detail snaps into place. He asked if I had ever published small process templates or step-by-step guides in local accounting newsletters. I told him that I had, though most of those pieces were simple and practical. He nodded again, this time with a thoughtful look. He said that he had seen something similar in an internal project months earlier, and that my name had been familiar even before tonight. I felt a small shift in the air between us. It wasn't tense, just curious. He didn't push the subject. He only said that he might follow up later because something about my explanation matched a question he had been working through. Before leaving, he asked quietly how I was related to Michael. I told him that I was Michael's father-in-law. He held that answer in his eyes for a moment. Not judgment, not surprise, just a calculation that he kept to himself. Then he thanked me for the conversation and moved on, leaving me with an unexpected sense that a door had opened somewhere I could not yet see. Later in the evening, when most people were drifting toward their seats, Daniel found me again near the back of the ballroom. He approached slowly, as if weighing whether it was the right moment. He told me that he did not want to take much of my time. He said he only needed to confirm a small detail for professional reasons and preferred to ask me directly rather than guess. We stepped a few feet away from the crowd. The music had lowered, and the room had shifted into that quiet hum people make before a program begins. He said that something I mentioned earlier had stayed on his mind. Specifically, the simple process templates I had written years ago for cost recovery and internal tracking. He explained that, for months, his team had been questioning the originality of a system Michael claimed to have designed. He said it in a calm, careful voice, one that avoided blame but made the concern clear. He told me that the structure of that system seemed familiar to him the first time he reviewed it, but he couldn't place why. Seeing me tonight brought the memory back. He had seen a similar method at that community program. I listened without interrupting. His words landed slowly, like puzzle pieces that had waited for the right shape to fall beside them. I told him that I had once written a short article explaining a simple way to track cost recovery with clear steps and examples. I also told him that I had shared old templates with Michael years earlier when he was studying for a certification exam. I explained that I gave them freely because he seemed eager to learn at the time. I never imagined he would use them at work without saying where they came from. Daniel nodded in a steady, thoughtful way. He said this matched what his team had noticed, and that it helped clarify why the system felt out of place for someone with Michael's background. He added that their concern was not about theft in a dramatic sense. It was about attribution, especially because the firm required employees to disclose any borrowed material when creating internal processes. He said that Michael had signed that policy as part of his role. It was standard, not punitive, but still important. I told him that I had no desire to create trouble. I was only confirming facts he had asked for, nothing more. He said he understood and appreciated the clarity. He asked if he could email me after the event to request documentation, such as old drafts or dated materials, just to complete the internal picture. I agreed. There was no reason not to. My work had always been simple, straightforward, and publicly shared. He assured me that nothing would happen that night. He said that social events were the last place any of this would be discussed formally. We stood there for a brief moment, quiet, watching people settle into their seats. I felt no triumph and no anger, only a slow realization that something long ignored was finally coming into view. Michael joined us suddenly, unaware of the conversation that had just ended. He greeted Daniel with enthusiasm and shifted into his usual confident tone. Daniel responded politely, but kept his expression neutral. It was subtle, but I noticed the difference. When Daniel walked away, Michael asked me if everything was all right. His voice was casual, but his eyes flicked toward me in a quick, assessing way. I told him that Daniel and I had simply talked about the community program from years ago, nothing more. He accepted the answer without probing. He was already scanning the room for someone else to impress. As we took our seats, I felt a quiet clarity settle inside me. I had not sought this. I had not pushed for anything beyond honesty, but truth has a way of rising when the right eyes notice the right detail. And tonight, without planning it, a small part of the truth had stepped into the light. A few days after the event, I received an email from Daniel. It was calm, professional, and direct. He thanked me for speaking with him and asked if I could confirm authorship of the templates and article I had mentioned. He explained that this request was part of a standard verification step. He also noted that Michael had signed an internal policy requiring clear attribution for any method used in company processes. His tone made it clear that the issue was not dramatic, but it was serious. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and opened the old folders stored on my laptop. I found the article I had written, the drafts with dates, and even the version I had emailed to Michael all those years ago while he was studying for a certification. I remembered how grateful he had sounded at the time. He told me then that the material made things finally click, as he put it. I sent Daniel everything he requested. I told him that the templates were meant to help anyone who needed them, and that I had never expected credit or praise. All I asked was that the facts be clear. I closed the laptop afterward and sat quietly for a while. I felt no excitement or worry, just a steady acceptance that reality was moving on its own path now. 2 days later, Michael came by our house. He arrived tense, his shoulders high and his expression tight. My daughter followed him in with a troubled look, as if she was not sure which version of the evening she was about to witness. He asked me what I had said to Daniel. His voice was controlled, but thin around the edges. I told him that Daniel had asked a question, and I had answered it honestly. Nothing more. He shook his head in frustration. He said that I had misunderstood the situation and made his work look less valuable. He said that everyone borrowed ideas, and that I should not have made it seem like he did something wrong. I told him that he was the one who had chosen how to present the system. All I did was confirm what I had created years earlier. He paced the living room. My daughter tried to calm him, placing her hand on his arm, but he brushed it off without looking at her. He said that the timing was terrible, that he had been under pressure to prove himself, and that using my old material was just a shortcut. He insisted that he had improved it and that the company would see it that way. My daughter looked at me then, as if seeing a new layer of the situation she had ignored for a long time. Her eyes shifted between us, filling with a quiet worry. I reminded Michael that he had signed a policy requiring disclosure. I said it in a calm, steady tone. He paused, caught off guard, as if the simple truth carried more weight than he expected. He muttered that nobody took those policies seriously. He said it like a defense, but it only made the room feel heavier. After he left, my daughter stayed behind. She sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly together. She said that she did not know how serious this could become, but she felt uneasy. She admitted that she had been dismissing small concerns for years because it was easier than facing them. I told her that she didn't need to take sides. I said that the company would handle things in whatever way their rules required and that I would stay out of the way. Over the next week, the internal review began. It was quiet at first. HR reached out, then compliance, then one of the managers involved with process documentation. Each person asked clear, simple questions about my work, when I wrote it, why I wrote it, what Michael had seen. I provided the same calm answers each time. Michael, meanwhile, started avoiding me. He stopped returning my daughter's messages during the day. He spent long evenings at work, coming home well after she had gone to bed. She told me one night that she felt caught between wanting to protect him and feeling disappointed by him. She said she wished he would just take responsibility instead of pushing the blame outward. As the review continued, the distance between them grew. It was not loud or dramatic. It was the quiet kind of distance, the type that builds when truth enters a room and refuses to leave. I kept to myself as much as I could. I cooked simple meals, read in the evenings, and waited for the company to finish its process. I did not want revenge. I did not want punishment. I only wanted clarity, and it was arriving piece by piece. And with every new piece, I felt the shape of the situation becoming impossible for Michael to outrun. The internal review moved slowly at first, then all at once. My daughter told me that Michael received a formal notice from HR requesting meetings with compliance and his direct manager. He tried to downplay it, saying it was routine, but the tightness around his mouth told a different story. A week later, Daniel emailed me again, thanking me for the documentation I had provided. He said the review was entering its final stage and that my assistance had been helpful in confirming the timeline of events. His tone remained calm and factual, nothing accusatory. I kept my days simple. I cooked breakfast, walked around the block when the weather allowed, and checked in on my daughter when she seemed overwhelmed. The house stayed quiet, but it was not a peaceful quiet. It was the kind that comes before people admit difficult truths. Michael finally told my daughter that the review centered on whether he had followed the firm's attribution policy. He said it with irritation, as if the rule itself was the problem rather than his decision to ignore it. He insisted that he had made improvements to my old system, and that should have been enough. My daughter asked him why he had not disclosed the source. He told her that it would have made him look inexperienced. He said it was easier to say it was his own work than to admit he used templates from someone else. Hearing her repeat that conversation to me later made something fall into place for her. She realized this was not a simple misunderstanding. It was a choice he had made and then doubled down on. After a few more days, the company completed its review. The findings were clear. Michael had used my material without disclosure. He had overstated his role in creating the cost recovery system, and he had violated the professional integrity policy he signed when he took the position. The firm decided not to terminate him. They determined that while his behavior was inappropriate, it did not meet the threshold for dismissal because the system did not involve financial misconduct. Instead, they demoted him. The demotion removed him from all budgeting decisions. He was reassigned to a lower position with limited responsibilities. He now reported to a manager who had once been his peer. His discretionary authority was revoked, and he was excluded from any project involving internal controls. It was a quiet punishment, but heavy in all the places that mattered to him. When my daughter told me about the decision, she sounded exhausted. She said Michael barely spoke to her after the meeting with his manager. He came home late, moved around the house without looking at her, and acted as if the walls themselves had betrayed him. He avoided me entirely. If he knew I might be at the house, he stayed away. If he saw my car in the driveway, he parked farther down the street and waited until the lights were off before coming inside. My daughter tried once more to ask him to talk about it. He told her that I had damaged his career and that I should have refused to participate in the review. He said the company exaggerated the issue and that he was being punished for a minor oversight. She told him that it was not a minor oversight and that blaming me only proved the company had been right to question him. He did not answer her. He went into the bedroom, closed the door, and stayed there for the rest of the night. Over the following days, she began to see the situation more clearly. It was not about the demotion alone. It was about the years of defensiveness, the insecurity, the unwillingness to take responsibility even when the truth was in front of him. As for me, I stayed steady. I answered what the company asked. I kept my tone calm. I held my place in the background, not pushing, not retreating. The truth had done the work on its own. And now, with the review finished, the weight of that truth was settling into all the corners Michael wanted to avoid. My daughter came to my house one afternoon after work. She looked tired in a way I had not seen before, like the strain had finally caught up to her. She told me that Michael had barely spoken to her since the demotion. He moved around their home as if she were part of the problem, not someone trying to support him. I listened quietly while she explained how he blamed everyone except himself. He said the company misunderstood him. He said the review was unfair. He said I should have refused to participate. She told me that hearing those words made something settle in her chest. She realized she had spent years giving him the benefit of the doubt, even when small things didn't feel right. She said it was easier to defend him than face the possibility that he had been choosing pride over honesty all along. I told her that I had only answered the questions I was given. I reminded her that I never pushed anything forward. The company followed its own rules and I stayed in my place. She nodded slowly. She said she knew that, and knowing it made everything clearer. She said she needed time to breathe and think without walking on eggshells. She asked if she could stay with me for a while. I told her that the door would always be open to her, no matter how long she needed. That evening, she packed a small bag and returned to my house. She looked relieved and sad at the same time. I did not tell her what to do next. I only told her that clarity arrives when people stop trying to hide from it. As she settled into the guest room, the house felt different, quieter but steadier. Some distances grow for a reason, and this one had reached its time. In the days that followed, the house settled into a calm rhythm. My daughter went to work, came home, and sat with me at the kitchen table while we talked about ordinary things. We avoided heavy conversations unless she brought them up herself. She told me that Michael had asked where she was staying. She said she kept her answer short, telling him she needed space. He didn't apologize. He only said that I had made things harder for everyone. I listened without reacting. There was nothing to win by showing anger. Some truths speak loudest when you let them stand on their own. I spent my mornings reading or taking short walks. It helped me think clearly. Getting older had taught me that peace often comes from staying steady when everything around you shakes. My daughter slowly began to see the pattern she had overlooked. She told me that she had defended Michael for years because she believed he would grow into the maturity he talked so much about. But the demotion peeled back years of behavior she had brushed aside. I told her that people show their real shape under pressure. Some take responsibility. Some find the nearest person to blame. She nodded, understanding something she had avoided admitting. She said she wasn't ready to make final decisions, but she felt lighter being in a place where she didn't feel responsible for someone else's choices. I told her that whatever she decided, I would stand beside her, not to interfere, but to support her as she built her own clarity. In the quiet of those evenings, I realized that the truth had carried us both to a calmer place. Not perfect, not simple, just honest. Sometimes that is all an older man can ask for. Thank you for listening to my story on elder vengeance. Please like this story and subscribe to the channel.